Meet Reed Lance Rosenthal, rancher, #1 best-selling, award-winning author, and unabashedly, unapologetically on the right side of the outstanding issues of our generation. But don't try to fence him in. Sometimes his positions will surprise you, because Reed is definitely his own man, with his own opinions. You might love him, you might hate him, but you won't be able to stop listening. Step over to the right side with Reed.
Howdy, listeners and viewers across the globe. We're going to reverse it. Across the globe, from Canada to the Gulf, the 51st state, and around the United States. This is Reed Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side Radio and the Cowboys Take on all those video channels all over the planet. Please subscribe, pass on the link, hit that like button, hit that bell button to let you know when our shows come out. And this is the second show this week. I think this is the second week or third week in a row, 2 shows. We're kind of gaining on our promises to you. Cool. And this happens to be Memorial Day evening. And I hope you had a great weekend. I hope you listened to the show before this one. And you took into account and you did not forget what Memorial Day is really all about. Yeah, there's hot dogs and hamburgers and camping and beaches and all that stuff, but it's a lot more to it. It's a lot more to it. And I'm going to give you a quote, which kind of goes to all those men and women. Back to Lexington and Concord, April 19th, 1775, right up to today, May 26, 2025. Across the globe and across the country, who've given their lives for us, folks, and our kids, and our children's children. And that quote is, "Lonely are the brave." We thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Maybe I should say from the bottom of our American hearts. All right. So this is going to be another little short show. Hopefully I'm doing better on the time here too. We're not going over the half an hour that a lot of you have said you'd like to keep it limited to. I guess because you can't take any more of me than that. Okay, got it. Story of my life. But this show, as promised to you, is going to be about, it's really going to be the next step in the thought process, right? This is all a 4D chess game that we're seeing played out on the planet. Some of the players are playing checkers. Some of the players are playing 4D chess. Other players don't even know the game's on. But I told you 5, 6, 7 weeks ago that it was my opinion, and I gave you all the facts and history behind it, that really what was happening here was a tripolar world hegemon system being set up. The United States in charge of the Western Hemisphere, China in charge of Asia, South China Sea, etc., and Russia in charge of Eurasia, and if they don't play their P's and Q's right, Europe. And that all these three would, not necessarily liking each other or trusting each other, but would agree to get along. Well, we're going to delve into what's really happening, which is partly along those lines, but partly not, because, countries are like people. They thirst for power, and they will take any advantage. And, nobody cares about who lives or dies at any place around the globe if you are a country or a leader in a country that is fighting to be a hegemon. And if you're not satisfied with your sphere of hegemony, you want more. Typical human. Human nature is the same. Going back probably a millennia, actually millions of years, certainly going back several millennia. I mean, we can go way back and see that, right? Okay, and now as to the ranch story. So we had this great rain. We got hay growing. It's up to the second rail and the jackleg fences and the whole 9 yards. I told you in the last show, we thought we were all set, and then whoosh, we were deluged by water, and we had to run around. And the motto of the story was, just when you think you're all set, you're not, to sum it up. Well, in the last day or two, though the weather forecast has been for rain, it's actually been quite nice. So all the precautions we took for 4 days of rain we're slowly unwinding them, because that affects the amount of water coming out of reservoir to wherever, okay? And so the motto of this story, folks, is that every time you think you're set, you won't be. And every time you think you won't be, you just might be. You'll have to think about that. All right. First of all, let's do a really quick rat-a-tat-tat. There's been a couple of Supreme Court cases and a couple of pending cases, and I've been bringing those to you over the last 2 weeks pretty steadily. We're going to go into more detail in the next show, which will be toward the end of this week, and we'll be going into the next promised show to you. Listen to my last one, then too. But basically, the Supreme Court is, they're kind of seesaw. It's a seesaw. And you don't really know which way they're going to go. I mean, there's been a 4-4 vote with Amy Coney Barrett recusing herself. There's been several 5-4 votes either way. There's been a couple of 9-zip votes. I mean, it's it's kind of like going into the casino. Who knows how the judicial dice are going to roll? But we'll bring those details to you up here in the next week, because there's several decisions coming out of the Supreme Court too, here in this last week of May. All right. A lot of folks had a lot of hope, economic and otherwise, with Trump coming into office. I cautioned you that he was inheriting a mess, that you don't want to get over your skis and thinking how good things are going to be, and that reality is going to take a long time, and lots of things are going to be very difficult to fix, and some things maybe can't be fixed, or can't be fixed within a reasonable human lifetime. Remember that you have had traitorous people working to undermine the finances and the economy and the people and the freedoms of the United States and the Constitution, going back to Woodrow Wilson, and then FDR, and then the rest of the crew after them, but particularly starting with Barack Obama in 2008, continuing through his third term, just thankfully ended this last January, 4 months ago. And all his little hench people in his communist and radical Islamist cabal, such as Janet Yellen and Comey, and I mean, the list is really kind of endless. But over on the international side, people also had huge hopes. It wasn't just domestic. I mean, Trump himself said he'd end the Ukraine war in 24 hours. I mean, obviously, everybody knew it was in 24 hours, but the inference was that it would be quick. And he also gave assurances relative to Israel and the Mideast. And he rattled the saber on Taiwan, and I can go on. You know what was said, you know what was represented, and you know what your expectations were, was that Trump would magically be able to waltz in and end the Ukraine war, that he'd be able to simmer down the boiling cauldron of the South China Sea around Taiwan, that he would somehow magically have Iran stand down and peace would descend on the Middle East. Those realizations were as unrealistic, folks, as your realizations or your expectations, shall we say, on the domestic economy and the unwind of the communist and woke culture that we have been subjected to by a tyrannical minority in the 12 years of the last 16 that Barack Obama's been in power, and his henchmen, I might add. So let's talk about what's really going on internationally and what I think you can expect, because this is kind of key, right? This could be life and death, never mind economic and political stability or instability. First of all, it's my opinion that Iran, who has just canceled the fifth attempt at talks to get something done, is not going to kowtow to the demands of the United States and Israel, which is to stop all enrichment. And there were some stumbles along the way by the United States. Witkoff, who is not the Secretary of State, he's a good buddy and very savvy businessman that Trump dispatched there, and also, by the way, to talk to Putin in Russia. But he told Iran, and he said on national news, that Iran would be allowed to continue enrichment for domestic purposes, but not for military purposes. Marco Rubio had a fit, went on 2 weeks of shows saying, nope, no enrichment whatsoever. And finally, Trump came around to Rubio's way of thinking, which obviously pissed off Iran. So the Ayatollah has basically said that the United States is a liar. They can't be trusted. Iran is not interested in negotiating any further, etc. So the Mideast, although in some ways it's been tamped down a little bit just by Israel's rather brutal attacks in Lebanon, in Yemen, in Syria, and in Gaza. And when I say brutal, I mean tough. I'm not saying that that everything they're doing is not warranted. I don't know if it is or not. You know, it's all psyops out there in mainstream media land and government speak land. But I can tell you that the Mideast is unlikely to resolve anytime soon. And what is the real reason that the Mideast is unlikely to resolve? You'll see a common thread here. Iran's military ally is Russia. Where is Russia engaged? Oh, that's right, Ukraine. And their other ally and best oil customer is China. And where are they engaged? Oh, that's right, the South China Sea and Taiwan and all around the globe, actually, when it comes to resource competition. And the more the United States, who obviously is in rather perilous financial condition, the more the United States, their energy, their finances, and their attention is diverted, the better for China and Russia, right? No playing cozy with this is your area, this is our area. It's like, oh, I see a little weakness here. Let's try and get like more area. So that's why the Mideast will not resolve. China and Russia don't want it to resolve for China and Russia's own motives. And, you know, for Taiwan, okay, Taiwan Straits, that's not going to resolve. I mean, the United States has this weird policy, you know, oh, we agree it's all one China, but we think Taiwan needs to be independent. I mean, you can't have it both ways. And China knows that time is their ally. You know, the Chinese are very patient. They're a 5,000-year-old society. We are a 249-year-old society. Quite a difference. Quite a difference in experience and patience. They have no elections, and we have elections every 2 years and every 4 years. So, you know, put all that into the pancake batter mix in your brain. And China knows that just by, should we say, beating the drums over there in Taiwan, they can also distract the United States. They can also drain U.S. resources. They can also split U.S. military power. And they're doing just enough to keep that up, but not enough to really get into trouble with Taiwan. In fact, the other day, I think it was 2 days ago, they announced live fire exercises in the Straits at the same time that the Taiwanese, who had announced it long before, were doing live fire exercises in the Straits. Oh, what could go wrong? Sure. And then we have India and Pakistan. Well, it's really interesting. So India is kind of friendly with China, maybe, not so much. And kind of friendly with the United States, and kind of like, India likes to play like right on top of the fence so it can lean whichever way the wind is blowing. Pakistan is kind of a rogue nation. Pakistan is Muslim, India is Buddhist and Hindu, and with that religious mix, you have a basic enmity. You also have the enmity over the region of Kashmir that's been a geopolitical enmity for years, decades, centuries. And everybody, the mainstream media, they're all backing down, and it's a lot more. They're not backing down at all. Pakistan is on full alert. They're both nuclear powers. India is said to be amassing kind of warplanes and war machine materials, and this is not solved. Now, the United States has made a valiant effort. I mean, Trump's motives are there. His attempts are there. But you can't fix a flat tire with a piece of bubble gum. Okay? You just can't do it. And do not look for Russia and China to get in there. First of all, China is no friends with India, really. And Russia is no friends with Pakistan, really. And, once again, the United States is distracted. Their resources are scattered. And that's good for Russia and China. And then you have the Congo and Rwanda. And I probably mispronounced that name. That's all right. Those two countries have been at odds and at war, and it's like partial civil war, plus geopolitical international, ultra-national states war for, almost as long as India and Pakistan. Well, the Congo and Rwanda are very rich in resources. I mean, really rich in resources, rare earths, gold, silver, tungsten, nickel, you name it. The United States, to its credit, I mean, it's like 25 years behind China on China's Silk and Road Initiative. I brought you a whole series on that. Go to the archives. The history of China's Silk and Road Initiative. It's really an astounding initiative. It'll tell you how long-term their chess playing is, okay? But America is trying to catch up under Trump. So America's trying to broker a peace between those two countries, and in return, get a resource extraction deal, which would help those countries also. We'll see if that works, but, with China's tentacles deeply into Africa, because Barry sat on his butt quite intentionally since 2008, and Bill Clinton let them into the WTO in the 1990s. I don't know how that's going to turn out. I really don't. And then, of course, you have Ukraine. Now, there is no way that Russia is going to end the war in Ukraine. Number one, they have the complete upper hand militarily. That's number one. Number two, they have now built a war machine, both the ability to manufacture implements of war. They are humming along at full employment. Their economy is one of the best in the world. Their reserves in gold, silver, and other metals and in oil are phenomenal. And they are kind of shoulder to shoulder with China in the leader of what's happening with the BRICS and the M-Bridge International Payment Plan that the Chinese and the BRICS have set up. I brought you those shows too. Archive them. Check the archives on therightsideradio.com. That's on therightsideradio.com. So in Ukraine, or the Ukrainian peace negotiations, if you want to call them that. So here's where we're really at with Russia, okay? Yes, there was a phone call between Trump and Putin. It was about 2 hours long when you get done with translations and interpreters and all that. Maybe it was an hour. And here's what Russia has agreed to so far, folks. They've agreed to, trying to agree on a joint memorandum, like one-page memorandum, which would agree to maybe have a meeting sometime in the future. That's what's been agreed in Ukraine. So think about that in terms of the thoughts I'm bringing you to kind of ponder, okay? And folks, why would Russia want to end this war? Not only that, why do you think that Russia and China, who are joined at the hip thanks to the incredibly treasonous international policies of the neocons and the Democrats over the last 20 years, Russia should be our ally, folks, not China's. Why would China want Russia to end the Ukraine war when, once again, it is a distraction, it is a drain, and it is a dissipation of American finances, time, attention, energy, and resources, military resources? China doesn't want that war to end. They want Russia to drag that out and drag the United States out as long as it can, so that China can accomplish its mission of, shall we say, going a little bit further than being just the hegemon of Asia. So you have your rival hegemon powers working together along with their axis to make sure that things don't get solved, to keep the United States scattered and diffused militarily, financially, energy, focus, for their own gains. Until this situation kind of changes, until there's risk by some of these players, the risk to some of these players, I don't see a big change. I hope I'm wrong. I mean, I hope there's peace in Ukraine tomorrow. I hope Iran gets sensible tomorrow. I hope the Congo and their neighboring country over there, kiss and make up and send lots of stuff to the United States and make lots of money. I think it's all great. I hope that the Mideast, no pun intended, dies down and everybody kind of figures out what needs to happen so that you have some kind of mutual respect, certainly mutual empathy, and everybody can get along and increase their life expectancy and increase their prosperity, their happiness quotient. I mean, that's what I hope happens. But you have a lot of conflicting things going on here, and you have a lot of pressures being applied behind the scenes, which is going to, it's a very similar situation to that leading up to World War I. And I'm not saying that to say World War is coming. It may be. I don't know. But I think a little trip back history lane on the 5 years or so before World War I with secret alliances and all sorts of twisted and tortured, hidden people pushing buttons and manipulating their puppet countries, their puppet proxies. It might be very instructive. I mean, history definitely teaches us lessons. So here's the bottom line. Do not get your hopes up for all these, shall we say, potential peace dominoes to fall, or even one or two of them to fall in the relatively near future. And obviously, here in the United States, the Democrats, who are really the communists, who are rather, I'm being kind, treasonous, don't want anything to succeed. I mean, they don't care who lives and dies. They just want their power. They are the human representation of the nationalistic motivations of China and Russia. I mean, everything is run by humans, folks. It's all up to human nature. And anytime you can screw your enemy kind of behind the scenes, you're bogged down there, and better yourself, most humans will take advantage of that opportunity, and so will most countries. And I think that's right where we are right now in the peace process. There's nothing to be gained by Russia and China helping each other or helping any of these other countries get things resolved. They want the United States torn in a million directions, as do unfortunately, 30% of the U.S. population who calls themselves quote unquote Democrats. All right, as a little background on what's happening in Ukraine, despite the media and all the nonsense, and then you have the Europeans in there trying to screw things up for their own reasons. You know, they're trying to be their own hegemon. Hell, they can't even manage their own countries. I'll have to tell you a story about that sometime. This is Reed Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side Radio and the Cowboys Take. And I thank you for listening. Remember what Memorial Day is about, folks. Give a little thought to, I think, what's playing out on the 4D chessboard of international politics right now, peace and war. And we will talk here in the next 3 or 4 days. We will discuss a little bit more background on this hegemon theory that I have, and we will talk about history, what led up to World War I, the secret alliances and friendships and deals between countries which were hidden and which in the end created conflict that should have been avoided. Keep the wind at your back. We'll talk to you soon.
Please remember, if you've missed any shows, just click on Show Archive and you'll find all of his shows. We look forward to seeing you here again next week for another episode of Reed Lance Rosenthal on the Right Side.